Amina was a beloved schoolteacher in the peaceful village of Kisumo. Every morning, she walked through the dusty paths with her bright smile, greeting neighbors and carrying a basket of books. The children adored her, and the elders often said her heart was made of gold. For years, Amina had prayed quietly for one thing, a child to complete her joy. She and her husband, Tambboy, had tried for a long time. Each month brought hope, then tears, yet she never lost faith. When the test finally showed those two faint lines, Amina couldn't believe it. Her hands trembled as she held the small stick. A wave of joy and gratitude washed over her. She dropped to her knees and whispered a prayer, her eyes filling with tears. She imagined little feet running across their compound, a baby laughing in her arms, the lullabies she would sing at night. For her, it was a miracle. When she told Tambboy, he smiled. He said all the right things, held her hand, told her how proud he was, but his eyes didn't match his words. There was something cold in his gaze, something distant. While Amina began knitting baby clothes and rubbing her belly with shaw butter, dreaming of motherhood, Tambboy was already looking past her. His business was growing fast, and with success came attention from the city, from investors, and from women who wore perfume that Amina couldn't pronounce. He pretended to be happy, but in truth, Tambboy saw the baby as a burden, a delay to the life he thought he deserved. And though Amina glowed with love and hope, she didn't yet know that the man she trusted was already drifting away, quietly planning a betrayal she never saw coming. Amina had reached her 5th month of pregnancy, and her heart was full. Every kick she felt, every flutter inside her belly, made her smile wider. She had even started talking to the baby, calling it my little miracle. That evening, she wanted to surprise Tambboy with a special dinner. He had just closed a big business deal, and though he barely spoke to her anymore, Amina hoped a warm meal might bring him closer again, just like old times. She went to the market early, walking under the hot sun, carrying heavy bags filled with goat meat, yams, spices, and fresh vegetables. Her feet ached, her back was sore, but she pushed through, determined to make everything perfect. At home, she chopped, stirred, and cleaned non-stop. She sang soft songs as the pot bubbled over the fire, wiping sweat from her brow as she arranged the table with flowers. But no one noticed how pale she had grown. Her breath had become shallow. Her legs wobbled beneath her, but she kept going. Just as she lit the final lantern outside, her vision blurred. She clutched her belly with one hand and the edge of the table with the other. Then, without a sound, Amina collapsed onto the ground. Neighbors rushed in moments later, screaming for help. She was rushed to the clinic, but it was too late. The baby was gone. The woman who had waited so long, who had given everything, now lay still in a hospital bed, her arms empty. Tambboy didn't cry. He didn't even ask what happened. He simply stood there checking his phone, already thinking about his next meeting. And Amina, crushed with sorrow, realized she had lost more than just her child that night. She had lost the man she thought she knew. Amina sat quietly on the edge of their bed, her arms wrapped around her empty stomach. The silence in the house felt heavier than ever. Every sound, every tick of the clock reminded her of what she had lost. She thought Tambboy would hold her, whisper that it wasn't her fault, that they could try again when the time was right. But when he walked into the room, he didn't even look at her with warmth. He just stood there, arms folded, his face tight with something colder than anger, disgust. "You couldn't even carry the child," he said, his voice flat. "What kind of woman are you?" His words struck her like a slap. She blinked, trying to understand if she had heard him right. Her lips trembled. "Tambboy, it wasn't my fault. I tried," but he cut her off. "Trying is for failures. I need a wife who can give me a legacy, not excuses." Amina felt her heart shatter again, this time deeper than before. She had blamed herself already in her quiet moments, cried alone when no one was watching, but to hear it from him, the man who was supposed to be her partner, her protector, it was unbearable. He didn't sleep at home that night, and just 3 days later, he came back with papers in hand. "Sign these," he said, dropping them on the table. "I want a divorce. I've wasted enough time." Amina stared at the papers, her hands trembling. "Why now?" she whispered. Tambboy didn't even flinch. "I want someone fruitful, someone who can actually give me a family." And with that, he turned and walked out, leaving Amina alone, not just heartbroken, but discarded like she was never enough. With hands shaking and eyes swollen from days of crying, Amina stared at the divorce papers Tambboy had left on the table, the same table where she had once served him meals with love. Her heart was too broken to fight. She didn't have the strength to ask why again. She just picked up the pen, signed her name with quiet dignity, and walked away from the home they had built together, the home where her dreams had died. She packed her clothes into an old suitcase, folded the baby clothes she had once knitted, and placed them gently in a small box. As she stepped out the door, she didn't look back. There was nothing left to see, only memories that now felt like dust. Her neighbor, Mama Sifa, watched her leave and tried to hold back tears. "You are stronger than you know," she whispered. Amina just nodded, holding her grief deep inside. She traveled for hours by bus, through winding roads and dusty paths, until she reached the peaceful hills of Nyamwiro, where her grandmother lived. The moment Michelle opened the door and saw her, she didn't ask questions. She simply opened her arms and let Amina collapse into them. For the first time in weeks, Amina felt safe. Nyamwiro was quiet, surrounded by green hills and warm sun. Birds sang in the morning, and the air smelled of wildflowers and firewood. Her grandmother's small home was simple, but full of love. Amina began to heal, slowly, with every cup of herbal tea, every story by the fireplace, and every soft word from the woman who had raised her. Though her heart still ached, she started to breathe again. She didn't know it yet, but this peaceful place would become the soil where something new would begin to grow. In the quiet hills of Nyamwiro, Amina began to find herself again. At first, she spent most days sitting under the mango tree, watching the clouds and trying to silence the pain in her chest. Her grandmother, Mashale, never rushed her. She would sit beside her, gently holding her hand, sometimes in silence, sometimes sharing stories of women who had been broken, but not defeated. One morning, Michelle took her to the local women's gathering under the big baobab tree. A group of cheerful women were busy sorting herbs, weaving baskets, and laughing over pots of natural oils. They welcomed Amina warmly, offering her roasted maize and a place to sit. At first, she just watched, but day by day they gave her small tasks, grinding herbs, plaiting threads, mixing shea butter with scents from the hills. Amina's fingers, once stiff with sorrow, began to move with purpose again. Her mind, once full of grief, found peace in creating. She had always loved natural healing and teaching. Now she saw a chance to blend both. With encouragement from the women, she started organizing their skills, teaching better packaging, helping write labels, and even showing them simple bookkeeping. They decided to form a women's cooperative, something official and empowering. Amina led the way, naming it Nguvu ya Mama, a mother's strength. They made herbal soaps, healing oils, woven bags, and jewelry from seeds and beads. Orders began to come in from nearby towns. They even sent a package to the city. For the first time in a long while, Amina woke up with excitement. She smiled again, not just with her lips, but from deep within. The woman who had been broken was rising, not just for herself, but for every woman who had ever been told she wasn't enough. Back in the city, Tambboy wasted no time moving on. Just weeks after divorcing Amina, he married Zuleika, a glamorous woman from the city who always wore designer clothes and spoke with a sharp, sweet tongue. She was everything Amina wasn't, at least on the outside. Tall, flashy, and always ready for the next party, Zuleika made Tambboy feel important. He paraded her around like a trophy, showing her off at business dinners and social events. But behind the filtered selfies and expensive perfume, Zuleika had her own plans. She was never interested in love, only lifestyle, and Tambboy, blinded by pride and desire, couldn't see it. He handed her cards with no limits, shared access to his company accounts, and even introduced her to his business partner, Kito, trusting them both far too much. While Tambboy was busy chasing more deals, Zuleika and Kito were making secret plans. They whispered behind his back, forged documents, and slowly moved money from his company into hidden accounts. By the time Tambboy noticed something was off, it was too late. One morning, he woke up to an empty house. Zuleika was gone. So was Kito. So was half his company's money. His calls went unanswered. His employees started quitting. The bank froze his accounts. He stood in his once busy office, now quiet and cold, realizing the woman he chose over Amina had destroyed everything he had built. People whispered. The same people who once envied him now shook their heads with pity. Tambboy, the proud man who mocked his wife in her pain, was now alone, betrayed, and broke. And in the hills of Nyamwiro, far from the noise of the city, Amina's name was being spoken with honor, while Tambboy's name had become a warning. As if losing his wife and business partner wasn't enough, Tambboy's troubles grew worse. Soon, the government began investigating shady transactions linked to his company. Officials found forged signatures, fake invoices, and missing funds that pointed back to accounts opened under his name. Even though it was Zuleika and Kito who had done it all, Tambboy had signed off on many deals blindly, too proud to double-check anything. Now it was all crashing down. One afternoon, men in dark suits came to his office and handed him a court summons. The newspapers got hold of the story, and within days, headlines read, "Prominent businessman Tambboy Mbele under investigation for fraud." His face, once admired in glossy business magazines, was now plastered across scandal reports. Former clients pulled out, investors vanished, and his name was whispered like a bad omen. The bank froze all his accounts. His car was repossessed. His office lease was cancelled. Even the apartment he had bought with Zuleika's name on the papers was gone. People he once called friends stopped answering his calls. He tried to explain, tried to tell the truth, that he had been tricked, but no one wanted to hear it. In their eyes, Tambboy wasn't just a failed businessman. He was a liar, a fool, and a disgrace. He stood outside the courthouse in a wrinkled suit, cameras flashing in his face, reporters shouting questions. For the first time in his life, Tambboy had no answers. The man who had once looked down on others now looked up at the sky, empty and alone, realizing that the very life he built on pride and selfishness was now crumbling into dust. And far away, Amina was rising, stronger, wiser, and untouched by the storm that had swallowed him whole. Years passed, and Tambboy became a man no one recognized anymore. He had lost everything: his wealth, his business, his status. He lived quietly in a rented single-room apartment, far from the high-rise life he once flaunted. His phone rarely rang, and when it did, it was usually from debt collectors. The only thing he had left was time, too much of it to sit and think about all the wrong turns he had taken. One evening, as he scrolled through channels on his old TV, he paused on a live broadcast of the National Entrepreneurship Awards. The hall was full of dignitaries, applause, and bright lights. And then he saw her, Amina. She walked across the grand stage in a beautiful Ankara gown, glowing with grace and confidence. The crowd stood and clapped loudly as the host announced, "Amina Chikondi, founder of the Nguvu ya Mama initiative, is being honored for empowering over 10,000 women across rural communities with jobs, education, and hope." Tambboy's heart stopped. She looked so different, yet the same gentle eyes, but now filled with power, the same soft smile, but now shining with pride. He leaned closer to the screen, barely breathing, watching her receive her award with tears in her eyes. She thanked her grandmother, the women of Nyamwiro, and every woman who had ever been told she wasn't enough. She didn't mention him, not once. Tambboy's eyes filled with tears, not because she had become great without him, but because he finally saw the kind of woman she had always been, and he had thrown it all away. That night, as the crowd cheered her name, Tambboy sat in silence, knowing that karma didn't just come back, it watched everything and waited. After the awards ceremony, Tambboy couldn't sleep. He couldn't stop thinking about Amina, how far she had come, how powerful and beautiful she looked standing on that stage. For days he rehearsed what he would say if he ever saw her again. He convinced himself she would at least listen. Maybe she would understand. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a way back into her life. So he waited for an event where he knew she would be speaking, a public panel on women's leadership. He dressed in his best clothes, though they were old and worn. When Amina stepped off the stage, he walked toward her with shaky hands and a heart full of regret. "Amina," he called softly. She turned, and for a second, their eyes met. The world felt still. Tambboy tried to smile. "I've watched everything you've done. I'm proud of you. I was a fool. I didn't see your worth back then. I wanted to say I'm sorry. Maybe we can talk sometime. Maybe we can start over." Amina looked at him quietly. She wasn't angry, she wasn't bitter, but there was a calm strength in her that wrapped around her like armor. She smiled gently and said, "Tambboy, you divorced a woman. I became a force." That was all. Then she walked away, surrounded by young women who looked up to her like a queen. Tambboy stood there, speechless, holding nothing but his old pain. For the first time he understood. Amina didn't just survive what he did to her. She rose above it. She didn't need revenge. Her success was enough, and her words echoed in his soul like thunder in an empty valley. Back in Kisumu, where Amina's journey began, she decided to give back in a way that touched the heart of every woman who had ever felt broken or forgotten. With the success of her businesses and the support of the community, she opened a new training center right in the village, a place where women could come to learn skills, find support, and rebuild their lives with dignity. The center was more than just bricks and mortar. It was a safe haven filled with laughter, hope, and the quiet strength of women who had endured pain but refused to be defined by it. Amina named it Misichana wa Moyo, which means girl of the heart in their language. She dedicated it especially to women who had suffered in silence, those who faced heartbreak, loss, or betrayal, but found the courage to rise again. At the opening ceremony, Amina spoke softly but powerfully. She didn't speak of hate or revenge. Instead, she talked about healing, forgiveness, and the power of community. She shared her own story, not to evoke pity, but to inspire change. Women from all over the region came to join the cooperative, attend classes, and find a sisterhood that lifted them up. The center offered everything from craft making and herbal medicine training to financial literacy and emotional counseling. Amina believed that healing was not just about fixing what was broken, but building something new from the pieces. Her vision was clear: to create a future where women could stand tall, support one another, and rewrite their own stories. In time, Misichana wa Moyo became a beacon of hope. Amina became more than a successful entrepreneur. She became a symbol of healing, strength, and love, not hate. And in every smile, every handshake, every shared story, her legacy grew stronger, proving that true power comes from rising above pain with grace. If you found Amina's story inspiring, please like, share, and subscribe for more powerful tales of strength and hope. Remember, true courage is rising above pain and turning it into purpose.